good morning, good day, and good evening. Welcome to episode 170 something or other of Tech of a Tea. I am, as always, your host, Brody Robertson. Welcome back to the show. And you know what? Linux is over 1 billion seconds old. So this is 6 days ago, at least 6 days ago as I'm recording this. This video is probably coming out like a week or two from now. So this is going to be like, well, old news. But doesn't matter. Linux, as of the 0.1 kernel, so technically there were versions a little bit before that if you count like when Torvald started writing the code. But as of the first release, 1 billion seconds ago, which is kind of crazy. Like, you don't realize how many, I can't say words. You don't realize how, like, many seconds are in, like, anything more than, like, a minute. Like, if you think about seconds, right, okay? This is gonna go, like, real stupid real quickly. Like, okay, so we can work out, like, 60 seconds in a minute. And then you can go, like, okay, so there's 3,600 seconds in an hour, because there's 60 minutes in an hour. But, like, as soon as you get past that hour mark, right, everything just goes out the window, and things just start, like, you don't think in the concept of seconds, so you just don't realize how many seconds are in each of these periods. I have no idea what I'm doing right now, by the way. Like, this is the possibly the most nonsensical start I've ever had to a podcast, and it doesn't matter whatsoever. So if anyone's still watching after that, like, minute intro of just pure nonsense, hi, welcome. I guess it just weeds out the people who don't know how to deal with my style of speech. Who just don't know what to do with anything I'm saying. Like, as much as I like talking about Linux on this podcast, like, there are so many other things out there that do catch my interest. It seems like when I talk about Linux, though, like, because, most of my audience is from the Linux channel, the Linux channel stuff, the Linuxy sort of stuff, is what ends up sort of getting the most attention. The podcast is supposed to be more of like a general techie thing, and at some point I would like to bring, more general techie people on. But for now, we just keep doing the Linux thing, and, it is what it is. Speaking of Linux, though, if any of you guys missed this from my video last week or whatever it was, as your Linux... Like, I'm actually surprised by how mostly tame the responses I got were on that video. Like, obviously, there are people being like, Azure Linux bad, Microsoft bad, never going to use this. And that makes sense. But usually when I talk about Linux, I'll talk about, like, Microsoft, there's, like, rage and anger, and a lot of people just simply don't want to hear anything about Microsoft whatsoever, at least in even a slightly positive light. Maybe it's just the fact they got held for review. Let's actually go and check. Is there anything in here that's really aggressive? No, I'm actually not seeing anything in here. It seems like, obviously, people are like, I'm never going to run this, which you weren't going to run it anyway, because Azure Linux is a modified version of CBL Mariner, whatever you want to say the name as. But it's only available on the Azure Kubernetes service. So, like, you weren't going to be running it on, like, a daily driver system in the first place. So, pretty much the only interaction you would have with it is it being used on a backend server for something that you happen to be using. For the people who are already interested in running Azure anyway, like, having an extra Microsoft thing doesn't really matter. The one thing that is kind of interesting about the Azure Linux thing is obviously Microsoft would, like, want to use it because they have the Microsoft stuff. It's their thing. Like, it's built around what they need a distro to be doing. But, like, I don't know why someone else would want to go and use it. Because, you can do whatever you want to do on RHEL. You can do whatever you want to do on Ubuntu. And they've got their whole, like, support system, their packaging system, all that fun stuff. But you have this thing from Microsoft where it's not like they're offering package repos in the same way. It's just this is the thing, it has the things we need it to have. Yes, it does support RPM, so technically you could install stuff from like the rel repos, but considering that like the dependencies are going to be different, you might end up running into problems there. You might like end up nuking basically your entire system. So even though it is, technically supported, it wouldn't be, you wouldn't have that same sort of architecture availability that you would have by using something else that exists. I'm sure someone who's like a big Azure fan, a big Microsoft fan, could explain, especially if they've decided to start using this, why this particular distro is going to do what they need it to do. Maybe their workflow is just very similar to what Microsoft is like doing anyway. So if that's the case, then it would just make sense to use the thing that is already there. Or they're like a partner with Microsoft or something like that, where like they're already doing things in some, like they're not from Microsoft, but they're interacting with Microsoft in a way that it makes it easier just to use the Microsoft tooling to do it anyway. That's basically my thought on it, but I don't know. It's certainly not a thing that I would ever personally like interact with. Like I don't use the Webby Azure nonsense. I don't even know how Kubernetes works. Like Kubernetes is something that I've heard of a bunch of times, but I've never actually bothered to learn. One day it might happen. One day, if I ever need to get like a real job or something. Like if this YouTube thing ever falls apart and I'm like, hey, you know that idea of like going and getting involved in the web space, which is an idea I had at some point. I was like, you know what? Like when I was in university in like my 3rd and 4th year, but like before I started doing the channel, so it probably would have been early to middle of 3rd year and 2nd year. I was like, after university, I'm gonna be a web developer. Like I actually wanted to go do web development as my like career, and maybe that'll happen at some point. Like I don't know why web particularly was what like grabbed my attention. Because, maybe it was just that I was, like, doing a lot of React stuff at the time, doing a lot of Angular stuff. I was actually getting, like, really involved in learning the, like, whatever the, like, the current trendy web stuff is at the time. Like, obviously a lot of the web still runs on jQuery, but I was trying to find out, like, okay, what's this whole ECMAScript thing? Like, what are these transpilers and all this stuff? And I don't even know the state of the web anymore. Like, I don't know what the new hip thing is. I know that, like, there was a period where Node was super big, and then everyone was, like, really into Node. I've done some, like, Python work myself, but I don't know what, like, the whole, like, the new trendy thing is. It could be something, like, that makes no sense. But the web just moves so quickly that if you're trying to keep up with the trendy stuff, you're just going to drive yourself absolutely insane. Like, you're not going to get any work actually done. It's just going to be following whatever the trend is, trying to learn, like, a new thing, and then by next week, some startup has made some other new thing popular. But at the end of the day, half the web still runs on jQuery, so it doesn't even matter what the trendy thing is anyway, because you probably want to know jQuery. You probably want to know how to, like, mess around with Bootstrap. Maybe you want to do some React stuff, but like, if you really want to like go crazy with it, you can absolutely do so. But one thing I did want to talk about that I've probably done a video on by the time that you guys actually see this is the Ubuntu Snap Desktop, which anybody in their right mind could have predicted. Like, there's nobody out there, right, that sees what Ubuntu has been doing, what Canonical's been doing, and didn't think that they would eventually release like an immutable desktop that was entirely based around snaps. This is supposed to be happening next year, so I would imagine... Wait, it's the LTS. Wait, yes? Is it LTS? I think it's LTS. Yeah, LTS version. So it'll be with 24.04 then. Probably. Unless they, like, fuck things up and have to go, like, a version later. But 24.04 is going to have two versions. It's going to have, at least I presume it's going to be that one. It's going to have the classic deb-based version, which is like your normal LTS that you would always go and download if you want to go and use it. But they're also going to have an immutable snap-based build for enthusiasts to experiment with. You can't see me right now, but I assure you I'm pulling the best faux shocked face. Yeah, and like anybody who's actually surprised by this, just you are not paying any attention to the Linux desktop. Like, Fedora has been going hard on pushing the immutable stuff and using Flatpaks. That's something that's pretty obvious has been happening. It should be no surprise that Canonical's interested in doing the same thing. Also, it's not like this is the first time they've ever actually done anything snap-based. Like, they've got Ubuntu Core. Ubuntu Core has been around since 2015. I didn't realize it was that long. But Ubuntu Core is based around IoT and embedded devices. So this is more like the server side, the thing that, you know, snaps were traditionally made for before being migrated over to the desktop space. As it says here, Core isn't a desktop product. You can probably use it on desktop if you wanted to. And yeah, you can install it on a fucking Raspberry Pi 4 if you wanted to, for some reason, and then install a desktop on it. But I'm honestly waiting for everything in the stack to be a snap, because what they did recently, and this is for 23.10, is Cups is going to be a snap. Cups is what does Cups stand for? I don't remember. It's the Linux printing stack. I'm gonna check what Cups stands for actually. It's gonna be some like really weird acronym. Linux Cups stand for Common Unix Printing System. Oh, it actually makes sense. Okay. I thought it was gonna be like computerized, unique, blah blah, some nonsense. And they're also, this isn't really that crazy. Canonical Steam Snap will let you easily switch Mesa stacks. So basically, that means they have the graphics drivers also snapped. I don't know if they can do it with NVIDIA yet. If they can do it with NVIDIA, that's also kind of that's kind of crazy as well. I know there are like snap kernels. I don't know if there's an official Ubuntu thing yet. Snap Linux kernel, like a official canonical thing. Is this a thing? Wait, maybe it is. Actually, maybe it is. Except, yeah, here we go. As the name implies, the kernel snap is responsible for defining the Linux kernel that will run a snap-based system. Yeah, so they do have a snap kernel as well. So, it should be no surprise that this is the direction we're going. I expect when it comes out to get a lot of criticism. Maybe you could argue rightly so, maybe you could argue not rightly so. I don't have any interest in running a snap system. Like, I know snaps have gotten better, I know they've gotten faster, I just don't care about snaps. Like, the rest of the Linux desktop has put their effort behind Flatpaks. Flatpaks is the direction that the community is going. But Canonical is hard set on making snaps a thing. And I'm sure they can do it in their context, and maybe more things are going to be made as a snap. And they are gaining popularity in a sense. But Flatpaks just have so much more community support, and I don't really see that changing. I don't know if there's any way that Canonical can reverse the community sentiment that's around snaps. I'm certainly not saying that I'm not part of that sentiment that's saying that snaps are bad, because I've certainly made my opinion pretty clear on snaps in the past, and I've made videos about it. Plenty of other people have made videos about it. But I'm curious to see how this is going to go. Like, if this goes well and people actually like it, I could see there being more drive behind a snap desktop. Regardless of, how that goes, there's definitely going to be some drive behind more immutability. I've said before that immutability probably is never going to be the only thing on the desktop. There's always going to be your distros like Arch Linux, like Gentoo, like Void, which are always going to be their own thing. and are never going to be immutable in the same sense as Fedora, Ubuntu, this new Ubuntu, like any of these other things. So anyone worried about everything becoming immutable, there's like that just doesn't make any sense as a concern, Like Linux is always, unless at some point everyone decides to make things proprietary, Linux is always going to have these standout systems that do their own thing. It's just that the next standout thing is going to be not being immutable. But even so, that's still like a while away. Like, this is a test. It's to see if it's actually going to be like work on the desktop, if people actually care about it. I think if they did this a couple of years earlier, maybe it would be, maybe, I don't know. Because if they did this a couple of years earlier, maybe they would have had Flatpak supported as well. From my understanding, Flatpak is not going to be a part of this, so it's going to be snaps. And maybe there'll be a way to get Flatpak actually running and installing Flatpaks. But if it's just purely snaps, there's going to be a lot of things that just aren't available as a snap. Snap Store. Let's see how many programs are actually on the Snap Store. Like, ultimately what I would want is I would want both things to be available. I would want snaps and Flatpaks to be available. So if something is a snap, if something is a Flatpak, you can very easily go and pick and choose which one you want. The advantage that snaps does have is there is a lot more of the official proprietary applications like PyCharm, PHP Storm. There's a lot of JetBrains stuff on here. Like, that's something they do like really well. That Flatpak just doesn't really have right now. There is obviously a lot of there are some proprietary applications on Flatpak as well. It's just not to the same extent, and the ones that are there aren't the like official applications in most situations. There might be a couple that I don't know about, but that's the way that I understand it currently. I wish them the best. I do wish them the best. As much as I might be critical of it when it does happen, I hope it goes well. Because at the end of the day, even if it's really good, it's never going to affect me. Like, that's the thing. Even if it's really good and changes what Ubuntu is doing, I don't care what Ubuntu is doing. I don't use Ubuntu. I care about what Fedora is doing, because Fedora tends to be more of a culture leader on the Linux desktop. Like, when Fedora does something, a lot of distros tend to follow suit. Like with the hardware acceleration stuff. But no one really cares what Ubuntu does outside of Ubuntu. So if they do something stupid, everyone just laughs and be like, oh, it's Ubuntu doing something stupid. There's nothing really that's surprising. It just is what it is, basically. But yeah, hope it goes well. No segue whatsoever. But do you guys remember I said like 6 months back, when Twitter announced they're like changing up the API pricing? Let's see. Twitter API pricing. What is the pricing even at right now? So, how much is it? Okay, so basic. Here we go. Okay. So the free tier is 1,500 tweets per month. Okay. The basic tier, $100. They were posting up to 3,000 tweets per month at the user level, or 50,000 tweets at the app level. Okay. And then enterprise is $42,000 a month. Like, what are these scaling? So we go from free to 100 to 42 grand. Which basically killed third-party applications. But I said this when Twitter introduced the... Wait, can we actually see it from the developer website? Here we go. Wait. Okay, wait, no, there's one plan they missed. There is a $5,000 a month that gives you 1 million tweets at the app level, or 300,000. Wait, 1 million tweets per month. Oh, wait, that's get requests. That's getting the that's like procuring the tweets, and then 300,000 posting. Then you have the enterprise above that. So you go from free to 100 to 5,000 to enterprise. I don't know why they don't have a sliding scale. I don't know why they don't do what AWS does, where you pay for what you're using. Like, this is such a basic thing that actually gets more people using your system. If the usage goes up, you don't have a flat price. You scale it up, allowing more people to like jump in. Because maybe you need more than basic, but like pro is ridiculous. But you need something like a $1,000 tier. Well, why is there not a sliding scale? But that's not the point. That's not the thing we're getting at. Twitter's API pricing is fucking insane. But I said when Twitter did this, and then when Twitter introduced being able to pay for verification, that other platforms were going to do this as well. And you know what? I was completely right. So Reddit, Reddit has increased their API pricing. Or at least they're going to be doing in a couple of days, a month. When is it? When does the pricing come in? Going to when is the actual pricing change? We should have a double, blah blah blah. 2019. I thought it said when it actually happened in here. Okay, so this is from Apollo. So Apollo is a third-party Reddit client, from my understanding. I'll show you the app. Here we go. It is a beautiful Reddit app built for power and speed, which is, marketing nonsense. But like, it's a Reddit app. Looks cool. Like, I'm not a big fan of Reddit, but like, if this is something that you care about, then like, yeah, go ahead and use it. Or don't use it, because they're going to charge you ridiculous amounts for the API. Well, you can't, because this is gonna fucking shut down. So I'll cut to the chase. 50 million requests cost $12,000. A figure far more than I could ever have imagined. Apollo made 7 billion requests last month, which would put it at $1.7 million per month, or $20 million per year. Even if I only kept subscription users, the average Apollo user uses 344 requests per day, which would cost $2.50 per month, which doesn't sound like a lot, but Apollo is a massive application, which is over double what the subscription currently costs. So they actually do have a subscription, so that would be, their subscription would be like $1 a month or something, which is probably just keeping the, like, which is probably just giving them some funding. So I would imagine they would need to raise the pricing to... Okay, so let's see. Assuming you want to still have free users on the application, you would need to raise up the subscription users, the subscription pricing to the point where they still want to pay it, but it justifies the free users, and the free users are going to be the majority of the application. So you would need to charge, like, probably minimum $5, $6 a month, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're going from a very small subscription up to $6, a lot of people are just going to say it's not worth it and go to the main Reddit client. I'm deeply disappointed in this price. Reddit iterated the price would be A, reasonable and based in reality. That's funny. And they would not operate like Twitter. That's so funny. That's so funny that you believe that another social media platform is not going to do what another social media platform has already made acceptable. So Twitter's pricing was publicly ridiculed for its obscene price of 42,000. Oh, so the enterprise level was 50 million tweets. Reddit is still 12,000 for reference. Reddit is still 12,000. For reference, I pay Imgur, a site similar to Reddit in user base and media, $166 for the same 50 million API calls. So $12,000, $166. It seems like what they're trying to do here, what all of these platforms are trying to do, is basically just kill off third-party development. Like, that's all that is doing. Because even if we're talking about, like, a big corporate developed application, that is so much money. A lot of companies just are not going to bother getting involved with that. As for the pricing, despite claims that it will be based in reality, it seems anything but. Less than 2 years ago, they said they crossed 100 million in quarterly revenue for the first time ever. If we assume that despite the economic downturn, they managed to do that every single quarter now, and for your best quarter, you doubled it to 200 million. Let's also be generous and go far above industry estimates and say you made another 50 million in Reddit premium subscriptions. That's 550 million in revenue per year. Let's say an even 600 million. These numbers seem to be just pulled mostly out of thin air. So at generous estimates of 600 million, and 430 million active monthly users, that's $1.40 per user per year, or 12 cents per month. So for Apollo, the average user uses 344 requests daily, or 10.6k monthly. With the proposed API pricing, the average user in Apollo would cost $2.50, which is 20x higher than a generous estimate of what each user brings Reddit in revenue. Yeah. So basically, trying to price out companies from the API. I know there were some other changes about Reddit. I know there's some stuff about like not safe for work. Is this it? I'd heard that maybe third-party apps were not going to be able to like show not safe for work content, but maybe that's not the case. I'd not actually checked the source on that. Like, this is just like a ridiculous move from all of these companies. I know why they're doing it. It's because they can make a lot more money by getting the users onto the platform. It's a lot easier to show ads. It's a lot easier to get them on, like, you know, Reddit Premium. And for the apps that do want to run, you charge a ridiculous amount of money. So if they actually do have the ability to pay for it, then you make a lot more money from the users as well. I think Twitter is only like a part of this. Obviously, Twitter is what opened the floodgates, but I think the bigger part is the fact that a lot of these companies are making way less money than they did at the peak of COVID. Like, all of these companies are way higher than they were prior to COVID, but, you know, when you go from, say, you know, your peak is here, right? Your COVID peak is here. Prior to COVID, you're about here, right? And now you're here. Actually, prior to COVID, you're here. This is a bad example for the audio listeners. What I'm saying, right, is you're higher than you were prior COVID, you're lower than you were at your peak. There we go. So a lot of these companies are trying to find ways to bring that revenue back up to where it was, because, you know, you can never have a bad year. Every year has to be a growth year. And I know Reddit isn't public right now, but, like, even so, you still have people in the company that want the company to make more and more and more money. And I wouldn't be surprised if these sort of changes start happening on other platforms as well. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, YouTube starts doing it with their API. I wouldn't be surprised if they start doing some weird stuff and, like, trying to break YouTube DL. I'm surprised they haven't, like, really tried hard on that. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Meta starts introducing more, like, crazy API pricing. I don't know. Like, the entire point here is, like, I think we are getting to the end of APIs, like, not the end of APIs, but like the new golden age of APIs. Like, the original golden age was when APIs were first being made public. Like in those very, very early days in the 90s and early 2000s, there were a lot of services that just had their APIs public and they were just free. And people were just pinging them constantly over and over and over again. That was the actual golden age. Nowadays, though, you have a more, what do you call it? Sustainable model where you charge for the API, but you still have a free tier, and the API charge, isn't that crazy, you know? Maybe you pay a couple $100 a year for, a really big application. Or you have a sliding scale like AWS. But I think we're getting to the point where a lot of third-party applications are just... A lot of third-party API, a lot of, these third-party things are just going to go by the wayside. Because if this doesn't change with Reddit, now you have two massive platforms that have made it acceptable to have crazy API pricing. And when you have that, then you're going to have a third and a fourth and a fifth, and you're going to get to a point where it's just industry standard to have API pricing that's absolutely ridiculous, and third-party services just cannot exist. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope that a lot of this stuff gets reverted and we go back to a point where APIs actually are functional and you can, use them. But I don't expect it to happen. And I wouldn't hold my breath for it happening either. Seems like you just accept that, it's just broken now. He's never coming back, and, yeah. But, I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's talk about something positive. Let's talk about some nice stuff coming out. So, recently, we had... Was it Computex? Yeah, recently we had Computex. And at Computex, there were some kind of crazy devices announced. Obviously, Computex always has lots of crazy things, but there was some crazy stuff introduced or unveiled, whatever term you want to use, in regards to capture cards. So we have one from Asus and we have one from Ava Media. Now, the Ava Media one, it looks really good, but Ava Media is kind of a bit wonky when it comes to having Linux support. I don't know if this is a UVC device. It doesn't make any mention of it. But the reason why this is exciting is now we are starting to see HDMI 2.1 capture cards. HDMI 2.1 basically removes most of the limitations we have around capture. Obviously, you still can't capture, 4K 360 hertz or something ridiculous like that. But when it comes to, your reasonable capture, the things that you're actually going to want to capture in a gaming context, there's pretty much no limit now. So this is the Asus device. This is a new model of their Asus Tough Box, which is something that's existed for a while. This just now has a HDMI 2.1. So with this, let's see if we can find the specs. So with HDMI 2.1 compatibility, the capture box allows HDR pass-through of video support up to 4K 144 hertz. So if I had this set up with my system, right, I could have pass-through basically all the time, and I wouldn't even notice that it's not just directly plugged into my GPU. And delivers high-quality video streaming up to 4K 60. 4K 60 video capture. Now, I'm curious what would happen if you drop it down to 1080p. I'm curious if it's going to offer, 1080p, 144 hertz. It probably should. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. The data would allow it. It's just a matter of whether that's an option they have available. It also supports variable refresh rate pass-through. So if you have a variable refresh rate monitor, you could literally just have this plugged in all the time and not even notice you're going through a capture card. You'd basically get the full specs of any reasonable monitor. It has two 3.5mm jacks. It's certified OBS compatible, which I believe the old Tough Box was as well. Onboard upscaling and downscaling, which is what usually exists in a capture card most of the time. Some of them are missing the upscaling part. Or the downscaling part. The device is also designed with an aluminum outer shell to dissipate heat and improve durability. Now, I believe the original Tough Box, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the original Tough Box did have some overheating issues. I could be thinking of another capture card, but I think this one had some issues. But if it's overheating, just, put a fan near it or something and it should be fine. A compact design with optimal rear-facing connections allows for easy integration in our gaming space. RGB lighting on the exterior, no one cares about that. Standby mode including USB operating speed, 3.2 versus 2.0. Wait, what? What does that mean? Standby mode including USB operating speed. I don't know what that means. Party mode, HDCP detection, normal on a capture card. HDMI signal interrupted, device signal issue, firmware updating. What? What is this? What? This is a really weird structure of a sentence. The only problem with the Asus devices is that they have this Windows software that is what you use to control the lighting on the device, do firmware updates, things like that. But I believe the old Tough Box is UVC compatible. Yeah, no, definitely is, because it was one of the devices I was considering buying. This is probably going to be UVC compatible, which is kind of incredible. Also, apparently they're making a PCIe capture card as well. Yeah. I hope that Epos Vox ends up doing a video on this, because if he does, and it's good, I may end up buying one at some point. So, AverMedia also has their own one, what is this one called? The Live Gamer Ultra 2.1. Wow, they've actually fixed their naming scheme. Oh, Live Gamer 4K 2.1. Wait, they have two cards with the same name? Oh. Oh, they call the internal card and the external card the same name. But I guess they have different product numbers. Wait, no, this is 4K 2.1, this is Ultra 2.1. Wait, what? Did I read it wrong before? Am I stupid? Oh, I am stupid. It does say it. So this does 4K 144 HDR VRR pass-through. Okay. Users can capture at a frame rate of 1080p 240. Okay. So I presume it does 4K 60 as well, because that would be the same data, yeah? Because 4K is 4K is 4 times 1080p. And then 60 is 240 is 4 times 60. Yeah. So theoretically, it's just structuring the numbers differently, but theoretically this can do 4K 60 as well if the capture card exposes the option. There's no data difference between those two things. It's just they said it weirdly. Doing frame rate capture of 1080p 240 just doesn't matter, to be completely honest. There's no reason to capture 1080p 40. 1080p 60, sorry. 1080p 40. 1080p 240. That's what I'm trying to say. Where are you uploading that? Where are you streaming that? There is no functional reason, unless you're trying to do, slow motion. Maybe you're trying to do that. But, besides that, you don't need to capture that. YouTube supports, does YouTube even support above 60 FPS? I think 60 is, their highest. But I'm very excited for these capture cards actually existing. It's great that we're finally getting capture cards that are this cracked. By the time we get to the next generation of, consoles, there will be, more stuff coming out, but, this is where we need to be right now. And we're kind of hitting, a soft limit on what people are actually buying. Like, most people are not going above 1080p displays. Like, if we look at the Steam hardware survey, I think 1080p is still by far the biggest. Steam hardware survey. I don't even know how big 4K is on the list at this point. Here we go. So 4K, I guess there's two versions because you got like the different standards. And like that, I think that's an ultra wide. 3%. 3%. And then 1.5 for this. 12.5% for 2560 by 1440. And 1080p is only going up. The funniest thing about this, right, is 2560 is what's dropping. Like, not 1080p. People are just dropping 2560 because I actually don't know. Wait, why was there a 2% rise in 1366 by 768? Wait, what? Because that's not the Steam Deck. What the fuck? Why is that going up? I don't... Is that a 4:3 resolution? Wait. No, it's not 4:3, is it? No, it's 60:9. Yeah? Yeah? Aspect ratio. Yeah, no, it is 16:9. Who the fuck is buying... Like, I get it being a big number, because at one point it was popular. But who is buying... Where are you buying 1366 by 768 displays? Why are those here? I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't know where these are coming from. But I don't expect 1080p to change for a long time. Like, this maybe 4K might become like a selling point. But like, most people are starting to care more about like higher frame rates. So like, it doesn't, the higher resolution doesn't matter at this point. 1080p is like basically enough if we're talking about a monitor. It's obviously TVs, very different thing, projectors, very different thing, but like, scaling's bad. Like, modern scaling is still bad on PCs. Like, it's better, and Macs do it well because Macs very much control like what hardware is being sold and all that stuff. But like, Windows and Linux is still really bad at scaling. And if you use a 4K display and then you do 4x scaling, you've literally just got a 1080p display. Like, there's no reason to have it, so no one's buying them. I think it'd be kind of funny if like 4K ends up actually just dying in the monitor space. Like, they just go away completely and we just stop at 1080p. Like, maybe we get to 500 hertz displays and then just nothing new ever happens. Like, the only new thing that happens is maybe better colors and different display text that have lower input latency and things like that. But as I said, I think we are getting to sort of a soft limit on what people actually care about. It's really difficult to convince someone who has a 165 hertz display or a 240 hertz display that anything is smoother than that. Like, 165 hertz, that's like real cheap now. Like, obviously, you know, not like dirt cheap, like, you know, $50 monitor sort of thing, but like, it's in the like $200-$300 range at this point. And then 240 is not that far away, and 360, it won't be that far away in like 3 or 4 years. So when all that happens, like, I want to know what the monitor companies are going to try to shill as the next thing. Especially, like, if you have 360 variable refresh rate, like, you don't need anything, like, you're not going to notice any difference above that. Like, unless you're intentionally trying to work, like, you're trying to examine every frame and you're, like, doing scientific testing. Like, if you're doing a field test, you're just not going to notice. And the only point where 4K is actually going to become Like, I think the big like holdback for 4K is games are getting more visually intense. So it's like you can barely run 1080p 60 or 1080p 120 or whatever you're aiming for. So why would you go and 4x your resolution for it to look maybe as good as like using good anti-aliasing when you could just not do that? You could just run some AA. You don't have scaling issues, and the game runs better. Like, the maths here just doesn't check out, and it seems like the industry hasn't caught on, but like the users caught on quite a while ago. That's my TED talk. Thank you for listening. Mm. I got here from talking about capture cards being absolutely cracked. So, yeah. Sometimes this happens. While we're on the topic of gaming, I guess, let's talk about some FF16 stuff. I was about to say 14. 16. So, if you guys don't know about this, there was this joke a while back when FF14 Endwalker came out. FF14 Grapes. So, in a place called... Was it Sharlayan? Was it Sharlayan that had the grapes? Yeah, it was Labyrinthos. So, yeah, in Sharlayan. So, in Labyrinthos, there were these grapes. They looked like this. This is how they looked in a modern video game that had an expansion come out that year. And everybody loved the grapes, right? Like, everybody memed on the grapes, but at the end of the day, people thought the grapes looked good. And in like a jokey sense. Eventually, they replaced the grapes with... Here's a much better picture of the grapes. It just looks like a crystal, right? Eventually, they included a new model for the grapes, which wasn't much better. Like, it really wasn't any better. In fact, you could argue it's probably worse. For this time, they added some more polygons to it. I would say this looks worse, if you ask me. Like, it's not good. It's not good by any means. I think, arguably, the meme grapes look better. But because of this, and because Yoshi P is the director, or the producer on FF16, someone asked him about the grapes in FF16. So, let's see what he actually had to say. Where do we go? So we definitely heard the feedback when we released that first trailer. People saw the UI and then gave a lot of feedback about how it looked so much like a fighting game. Okay, this is different stuff. Where is it? Where is the grape comment? So, someone asked, will Final Fantasy XVI have grapes? The response explained that there will be a region in the game that makes a lot of wine. So there'll be vineyards. And then comes the immortal quote. The first thing we did is we went in and checked the grape quality in Final Fantasy XVI. I made sure it was perfect. Art director Hiroshi Minagawa went on to add, translated by colleague Michael Christopher, Koji Fox, I looked at it and said, yeah, this is not going to be good enough. We need to raise the polygons in those grapes. Minagawa-san then adds, in English, next-gen grapes. Next-gen grapes, boys. Get excited for the next-gen grapes. I love that Yoshi is never going to be able to escape the grape comment. Like, he's never going to be able to escape grapes. Grapes are just an immortal thing in FF16 at this point. In FF14. In any game that he touches, right? Any game that he touches into the future, if there are grapes, people are going to ask about the quality of the grapes. I think he took the grape thing a little bit seriously. Maybe some people were actually angry about the quality of the grapes. Most people were just joking about it. They were like, this is just hilariously low quality, but like no one actually cared the grapes looked bad. In fact, people kind of want the grapes back. I'm certainly one of those people. Sadly, I wasn't an Endwalker at the time, so I didn't get to see the grapes firsthand. And now that I am in Sharlayan, and I've gone to Labyrinthos, I've seen the grapes, and sadly, the grapes are, well, the modern grapes. But Yoshibi's had a lot of interesting comments about 16. The one that I particularly wanted to talk about is his comments about open world games. So, if you haven't played 15, FF15 was the first truly open world Final Fantasy game. You would start the game in this one zone, the gates were locked, and that was sort of like the tutorial area. It was a massive zone by itself, and that could have been a big zone in just a regular game. But once you're done with like that first chapter, first, maybe second, then you got to go to basically the entire world. And you could just drive along wherever you wanted. Now, the problem with 15 is the open world. 15 had a lot of development issues. It had a lot of delays. The game got deleted a couple of times and remade from the ground up. And in this process, you had a game that had this massive world, but it didn't need a massive world. It was this massive world that felt empty. It felt like there was no reason for it to be there. Like, if you made it half the size, it would be the same game. It would just be quicker to get through. So Yoshi has, like, heard those comments, and they heard comments about 13 as well. Like, 13 was the extreme opposite end of the spectrum, where it was basically you were basically in a corridor. Like, 15, you could go anywhere you wanted. 13, you could go forward, and you could go backwards, sometimes. Sometimes the backwards path was blocked off. Maybe there would be a diverging path that came back to the same thing. Maybe there'd be a chest there. Maybe. Possibly. But most of the time, it was just a corridor. And 13 did a really good job at keeping up the game's pace. A lot of people complained about the linearity of the game, the fact that it didn't have extra mini-games in like the same way that older games did, and that's a fair complaint. But it definitely kept up the pace of the story. Like, you're always going through story beats, and I felt like 13 was a really fun game. Up until you get to the open world, where the game falls apart. 15 was in the same way, where you just had that first area, really fun game, then the entire world opens up, and it's like, well, I guess I could spend 5 minutes going over to this area and do a side quest there? I guess? So, 16 is taking a more zoned approach. We have big open zones, but they're going to be very populated zones, and you're going to go between zones. There's no reason to, like, waste time traveling places that you don't need to travel in. And he had some interesting comments about the way you build an open world game. So Yoshida talked in the interview about the problems in FF15 that arose from having a massive open world that ultimately wound up feeling a little empty for some players. If probably most players, maybe some people like the open world, maybe they thought it was like cinematic or whatever term you want to use. For me, I just didn't like it as much. He also says that simply making a less vast open world just isn't possible for a game in this series. Naoki notes, if you create this open world of the 23 wards of Tokyo, then basically the story has to take place in the 23 wards of Tokyo, and it can't take place outside of that. You can create more areas outside of that, but then that takes a lot of resources, and the more that you create, then the bigger the chance that you have of that a giant area that you created becoming empty. And that's the one thing that players hate the most, a huge open world, but there's nothing to do in it. So what he's saying is, if you make a big open world, then you basically are forcing yourself to use it for the content. Like, you're going to have big boss fights in this open world. You're going to have all of these events in the open world, and you could just not do it. And then have, like, separate zones where the big story beats happen. But the problem is, now you have this big open world where there's just empty space for no reason. You can do that, but, like, as he says, a lot of people don't like this this sort of world. Like back when Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, things like that were happening, the idea of having a big open world was really exciting. Like Far Cry 3, when that came out, that was a super exciting game. The problem is when you've played enough open world games, it's just like, why is it open? Like the whole appeal of a world being open sort of starts to disappear. I think the best example of an open world is you have a big map, but not. What's I think the best example of an open world is probably like some of the earlier Grand Theft Auto games. Like they are technically open world games. Like you have a big map, you can go anywhere you want. But the maps are small enough where they feel very populated. Or Yakuza is even a better example of this. Like Yakuza 0 has technically an open world, but it's this one town and it's very packed. It's populated to the fucking brim. Like when you're first going through Yakuza 0, you will run into side content like every fucking minute. That is when an open world is done right. Or San Andreas. Like San Andreas is another great example where you have this big open world map, but there's always things that are going on. And that's something that's being lost on a lot of games that are making the selling point of the game being a big map. Like you'll see big MMOs that are coming out, like Ashes of Creation. They're like, we have an X number of kilometer squared map, and that's cool, and it sounds really neat. But when you realize that just means there's going to be like tens of thousands of square meters of the map that are just nothing, it's just running for the sake of running, it just loses its appeal. I hope that whatever is done with 16's world, because I've not played it yet. By the time this comes out, I might have played it. I don't know when this is coming out. I hope whatever is done with the map keeps up those story beats, or at least drives you towards where the game wants you to go. Because 13 fell apart for me, and I have not even finished 13 because it just got really boring. 13 fell apart for me when you got that big that big open map. And it's just like, here's a side quest. Okay, go over here. Here's a side quest. Go over here. Here's a side quest. Go over here. And it's just directing you around the map. And then by the time you get to the main quest, it's like, okay, now I've got to run 10 minutes back to the other side of the map. Why? Like, what? Why? Why do I need to do this? One way you can address that is by giving you, like, better forms of transportation. But even then, like, 15 had that. 15 had the car. But there were parts of 15 where it's like, okay, you have to drive on the road. Right? Why? Why do I have to do that? Why do I have to spend an extra, like 3 to 5 minutes getting somewhere? And that doesn't sound like a lot, right? But, like, I'm playing a video game. I want to have fun. I don't want to just sit here waiting for something to happen. My favorite example of this in 15 is there were sections in that game where you would go from like one part of the map to another, and it'd be like it'd basically be a cutscene. You couldn't control the car. The game was just going to drive the car for you. But in a normal game, that would be a cutscene. You would have like the dialogue that happens, and then you get to where you want to go. In this game, there would be someone would say something. It'd be like a little quip, okay? And then like a minute later, something else would be said. And then another minute later, there'll be something else that's said. So, like, it drags out the conversation for the entire car ride instead of spending the 30 seconds it would take just to have the conversation in one block and then just teleport you to where you need to go. I'm happy there is this trend towards more, not linear in a sense, but less open, right? A game that is more directed towards, you know, trying to send you along to where you need to go. I think like with recently I played Nier Automata. That was a really fun game that kind of came out in that time where a lot of open world games were being made. Like, that game did not need to be open world. There were so many parts of that game that were just traveling, especially like during those segments where teleporting didn't work, where they were just running across the map for the sake of running across the map. It's like, okay, well, you're in the main hub area. Go to the desert. Teleporting isn't working right now, so you gotta like run from the city area to the desert, and it's like, okay, there's nothing here to fight. Like, there's no danger. There's no reason why it should take this long. It's just taking a long time for the sake of it. And I get that there is some appeal to, like, building out the world and building out an atmosphere where it feels like you're alone. And I totally get that. But we don't need to make every single game about building out the atmosphere of an empty world. Like, that's what Nier was trying to do. It was trying to be like, you are these androids on Earth. There are no people here. There's just robots. It's supposed to feel lonely. But, like, there are some games that just don't need to feel lonely. And Final Fantasy is one of those games. Especially, like, especially with the fact that 15, you had the fucking boy band with you the entire time. It's just, I don't want to feel lonely when I have this party. Just let me go play the game. There's a whole set of other problems with 15 as well, but the open world certainly wasn't helping it in that regard. But yeah. Actually, one neat thing I did see is, this is not related to Final Fantasy whatsoever, but this is related to gaming. This is this is to do with accessibility. So this is using two programs, Newman for voice control and Noggin for face tracking. Doing this on Linux. And he is the developer of this. So this guy is playing Mirror's Edge with his voice and his face. So where he, like, looks is where he's going to run to.
Ding.
And he's like,
Ding.
He says ding every time he wants to, like, do a, I guess, grab action, jump action, things like that. This is really cool. Like, obviously Mirror's Edge is a fairly simple game in regards to its control scheme. It's running, sliding, jumping, and that's pretty much the extent of it. So it's not like you need a massive set of inputs to do so. But, like, this is super cool. Like, this, I don't need something like this, right? Like, I can play with a controller, I can play with keyboard and mouse, all that fun stuff. But for people who actually do want to play games like this and need some other form of input method, like, this clearly makes the game, like, playable fairly well. Obviously, it would take a bit of getting used to play it this well. Like, this guy's obviously messed with it a bunch, and has a lot of understanding of how this goes. But even so, like, I think I've showed the video of the girl who played Elden Ring with her mind. Elden Ring mind. Yeah, this one. Playing Elden Ring with mind control. See if we can bring up the video. No, YouTube, play the video.
If you thought that
We know, mute that. So she has, like, this EEG thing on her head. And she is still doing some inputs with, like, a controller. But I believe her attack input is done with her mind. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's, like, attacking and dodging, maybe? Yeah. Like, this is so cool. Like, this is just genuinely cool. And as these things get better, it's going to make a lot more games a lot more playable for a lot more people. Obviously, there are going to be people that use it for, like, the purpose of a challenge run. Like, you know, I'm gonna beat Elden Ring with my mind. I'm gonna beat Elden Ring with face and voice control and all that stuff. And there's gonna be that as well. But it allows games. It allows games that maybe are less stressful. Like, what's a good example? Like maybe a turn-based game. You go play Octopath Travelers, and you control the game using your voice. So it's like, navigating the menus with your voice, things like that. Like, that is really cool. And like I'm curious to see where this goes over the next like 5 or 10 years, as we're starting to see, like when Neuralink actually becomes a thing. Maybe if it becomes a thing, like where this actually gets us to, in the future. I'm super excited for it. I'm definitely going to be following along with it. And, as stuff happens, as stuff comes out, I'm sure I'm going to run across it. I'm going to, like, talk about it on this show. Maybe I'll talk about some of the stuff on the main channel, talk about it over on the gaming channel, things like that. But, yeah, I'm maybe there's something, like, right now that I don't know about that's, like, super, super exciting that I probably should. If you happen to, like, know anything that I probably should know about that would be cool to look at, please do let me know. I very much would be excited with seeing so. Seeing so? With seeing it. Yes, I know how to speak English. I am an English professional. Yup. I am certainly a native English speaker, as an Australian should be. Or as a Australian born in Australia should be, or whatever. Anyway. I feel like another gaming topic on here. I did. Yes, I did. So, new PlayStation PC port prompts PS5 mockery among gamers. So, recently, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, the newest, when did it come out? When did the game actually come out? So this is the newest Ratchet & Clank game. It is getting a PC port. So Rift Apart came out 2 years ago. Okay, so it was a while ago. Actually, is it the newest game? Give me a second. Has there been a game since Rift Apart? No, Rift Apart is the latest game. This is getting a PC port. So there are less and less reasons to actually buy a console. Obviously, right now, PC games are in a bit of a mess of a state when it comes to ports. So some ports are a little bit wonky, things like that. But assuming the port works, assuming like you can actually play the game well, this is kind of like it's getting to the point where there are so few reasons to actually buy a PS5. Like, okay, right now, my PS5, I am playing Final Fantasy fucking 12. I am playing a HD remaster of a PS2 game. Like, on my shelf over here, so, on my shelf, I have, this, and I have this. So, we have Demon Souls, right? We have Demon Souls, and we have Final Fantasy Origins Stranger Paradise. This is a PS4 game, but it comes with a free PS5 upgrade. So technically a PS5 game. I have the PS5 version. Besides that, I want to play Ragnarok and FF16. And besides that, I genuinely don't have anything else to play on the PS5. It's basically a PS4 emulator. Like, if a game is on PC and the PC port is functional, I'll play it on PC. And this is this is one less reason for people who are excited about some of the exclusives to play on a console. And Ragnarok will be on PC at some point, because the last God of War game made its way to PC as well. But the funny thing about this is a big part of the marketing for Rift Apart is the SSD in the PS5. They're like, this game is only possible in the way it works because of the PS5's SSD, which is funny because the PS5's SSD is like it's just an SSD. It's just an SSD. Like you can stick a Samsung 960 Evo in a PS5. It'll work. Like it's just an SSD. Like it's just a M.2 SSD. There's nothing crazy about it. Obviously, obviously consoles have their like shared memory system, so it's a little bit different in that regard. But like, it doesn't matter otherwise. And I'm sort of the mindset, right, that maybe in like one or two generations, there's not really gonna be console exclusives outside of Nintendo. Now, Nintendo does not give a shit what the rest of the industry does. Nintendo will be Nintendo. They're gonna keep making Switches, they're gonna make some weird new system, and everyone's gonna buy it, because Nintendo. But Microsoft killed off exclusives a while back. Like, it's taken them a long time, but Microsoft finally realized that they make Windows. And they realized that if they make Windows, they can sell games on Windows. Mind blown. Imagine that. So they can sell the same games to other people on the platform they own. And Sony is finally starting to like let up on some of their licenses. Honestly, like I know people talk about the idea of like a Bloodborne PC release, but if that did happen, like Bloodborne as like a PS5 remake or something, that would probably sell consoles. Like Demon's Souls sold consoles, Ragnarok sold consoles, FF16 is going to sell consoles. Bloodborne would sell consoles. But if they released like a Bloodborne remaster or just Bloodborne on PC, Bloodborne 60 FPS patch, like why would anyone care anymore if it was on PC as well? Unless it was like terribly ported and no one wanted to play it. Like, why? Why would anyone even give a shit anymore? And that's a good thing, right? Like, I'm not saying that I want these series to like go away. I think it's a good thing that all of these series are making their way to PC. I'm just curious to see where Sony is going to be in a couple of generations from now. Obviously, they're fine during the PS5, but the PS5 was during COVID. The prices were getting scalped. No one had jobs. Obviously, it's going to take a long-ass time for anyone to even be able to like afford a PS5, let alone during that period where you couldn't buy them because they weren't for sale because of the scalpers. Probably by the PS6, you're going to see more like regular console sales, assuming prices don't go even higher. Like, imagine we get to the point where, like, a PS5 is, like, $1,000, which is, like, Australian pricing is absolutely possible. Maybe, like, $600-700 US. Like, when it gets to that point, like, you're genuinely entering PC pricing then. It's no longer a matter of, during the PS3 and PS4 days, buying a console was cheaper than buying a PC. Obviously, you get cheaper games, and in the long run, you could probably do the maths and work out it's cheaper. But if you get to the point where a console costs the price of a PC, besides the people that just want the convenience of having a console, why would you buy one? Like, that's the only thing that's going to exist as like a console selling point. Like when exclusives stop existing, it's just going to be the people that want something more convenient. And there's a lot of people that want convenience, but I would imagine a lot more people, if given the option of just getting a better PC, would probably consider just getting a better PC, especially once we get out of this like this weird rut we're in where you know ports are just fucking mess. Like there are so many bad ports coming out, let alone bad games like Golem. Yeah, like the entire situation is the entire gaming market's in a fun state right now. A fun state where just crazy changes are probably just around the corner. But on the topic of more gaming stuff, I do want to talk about this Tesla thing that happened. So Tesla has the ability to play games like in the Tesla. Now, this is supposed to be a feature for the passenger, not the driver. Makes sense because, you know, the driver probably shouldn't be playing video games whilst they are driving. I think this is a pretty accepted thing. I don't think anyone's gonna really try to argue that. Maybe someone will. But most people are gonna be like, yeah, no. Do not play video games when you are driving your car. Now, there was a situation back in 2021 where you actually could play games when the car was moving. And it would say, hey, this is only allowed for passengers. And you could just click it and then play the game. So when it's talking about the passenger, it's not talking about like screens in the back seats of the car. It's talking about the front seat passenger in like a thing that the driver can actually see. Even if you're not playing the game, like just that being there is going to be really, really distracting. And there was an investigation opened about this by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration because it's really dangerous that you have, like, it's bad enough, right? It's bad enough that we have touchscreens in cars to control things that used to be on dials. So it's like, hey, changing your volume, changing your, like, just every little thing, changing the heating in the car. All of the stuff that used to be physical dials, you could reach over and be like, okay, I know what this does, I know what this does, and, you know, mess around with it. The fact that that's been going away is bad enough, but then having video games playing in the car where you can see it is how that's ever been allowed on the road just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, soon after the investigation was announced, Tesla updated its software to disable the feature. Less than a month later, Tesla reported that 97% of its vehicles had completed the over-the-air software update. But while the investigation is closed, NHTSA says it may still take action in the future if a safety-related defect is discovered. In response to NHTSA, Tesla said that only recorded a small portion of instances when the passenger play feature was active while the vehicle was in motion. Of those instances, approximately a third were shown to be playing video games without a person in the passenger seat. Wait, what? Wait. Only recorded a small portion of instances when the passenger play feature was active while the vehicle was in motion. Of those, a third was shown. So there was the fact that they're saying a third here and then a small portion here kind of leads me to believe it's not a small portion. Like, a small portion, right, is, let's say, 15%. Like, that's a small portion. So going by that numbers, that could be, like, 5% of instances of passenger play had been done by a person driving when they're by themselves. Even if there's like 100 people, the fact that this exists in a car, like, this is just a software bug. You should not be able to play video games in a spot where the driver's seat can see. Like, that just doesn't matter how many people are using it. Like, that just shouldn't be a thing that you can actually do. Man, the state of modern cars. Like, remember, you could buy a car, it would have an engine, it would turn on. There's no updates. It just works. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe there's a problem with the engine. But like, there's no software to worry about. There's none of this bullshit. There's no TVs in your car. What a nice time that was. Like, it was exciting for me when I had a car that had it had a digital display telling me the songs. Like, my first car was a car from the early 2000s. It had a fucking, it had a a tape player. Yeah, a tape. Why did I say VCR? Had a tape player in the front seat. I don't have tapes. I didn't have tapes at all. It was like a tape CD combo thing. I replaced it with a head unit that had a digital display. It had knobs, it had buttons, all of that good stuff. But then, all this modern stuff, we got like fucking screens on the dash, screens on the center console, screens on the backseat, screens everywhere. Stop with the fucking screens. Stop it. Stop. We don't need screens in the car. At least my Impreza, like, while it does have a screen to control, like, the volume and stuff if you want to, there are buttons on the wheel. So I can still control stuff, like, with the buttons that I can just feel for. My car's from, like, 2013, though. I don't know what the more modern models are like. It could be worse. I would imagine it's probably worse. Judging by the direction that everything else in this industry has been going, I don't see any way that it could be better. Yeah. Maybe, possibly. There's like a tiny little teensy-wincy chance. But I wouldn't hold my breath for that. Just assume that everything is just getting worse, and then you'll never be disappointed, right? Like, if you assume that things are just going bad, and things are okay, things are good, in fact, wow, that's incredible. I thought it was gonna suck. Just assume that everything is gonna suck, and you will never be disappointed. There is my my life tip for the day. Maybe it's a depressing way to live, maybe, but like, I don't know. You certainly feel better about the things that suck will also be like less of a problem, because if something sucks and you're like, this is gonna suck, well, it sucks already. Like, you just assumed it. Like, it's not missing your disappointment. Like, the only time that it could be worse if it like really, really sucks, in which case, you probably should feel bad about that because it's something that needs to be dealt with, or something that's really bad that's happened in your life and it's like something you need to like address or whatever. But most of the time, things don't really, really suck. It's just mostly suck and good, and maybe you have a good day. Maybe it's even excellent. Maybe you don't even have a little suck in it. It's just like full on enjoy everything and just chilling and just having fun. I don't know what I'm going on about at this point. This sometimes happens. So, yes. Yes. What do we talk about? What have I not talked about on this list? Let's talk about this. Yeah, we'll talk about this. This was a fun one. So, there is this lawyer who probably should lose his license to like conduct law, because what he did is he did research, or he had someone in his firm do research for a case that he was on. The case involved a man suing an airline over an alleged personal industry injury. His legal team submitted a brief that cited several previous court cases in an attempt to prove, using precedent, why the case should move forward. Now, the problem is they use ChatGPT. Now, I would imagine they probably used 3.5. Maybe they used like 4.0, possibly. But probably the older version 3.5, because I don't know when this case actually happened. Because obviously, like, this happened 4 days ago, but I'm not sure when, like, the actual research was done for the case. If it was done, like, a month or two ago, which it probably would have been, then, yeah, it would definitely be 3.5. So, the problem is the airline's lawyers wrote to the judge that they could not find several of the cases that were referenced in the brief. So, ChatGPT straight up just made up cases, and we're like, here you go, here's cases that prove precedent. 6 of the submitted cases appear to be bogus judicial decisions with bogus quotes and bogus internal citations. Judge Castell, I say Castell, wrote in an order demanding the man's legal team explain itself. Over the course of several filings, it emerged that the research had not been prepared by Peter Leduca, who was the lawyer for the plaintiff, but by a colleague at the same law firm, Stephen A. Schwartz, who has been an attorney for more than 30 years. Like, this is not some new attorney who's just, like, come out of college, come out of law school, just, like, you know, all embedded in modern tech and is like, let's use this ChatGPT thing. It's going to make my life so much easier. This is someone who has been doing this job longer than a lot of the people watching this channel have been alive. And this person decided to use ChatGPT to look for similar cases. But not only look for similar cases, didn't check them himself. So, in his statement, Mr. Schwartz clarified that Mr. Leduca had not been part of the research and had no knowledge of how it had been carried out. Mr. Schwartz added that he greatly regrets relying on the chatbot, which he said he never used for legal research before, which is certainly an interesting statement, because it's very possible he's used it for legal research before. Like, obviously that's what he's saying, because that's what he needs to say to not lose his license to be an attorney. But, like, this is the sort of thing where you want to be investigating what he's previously done, what research he's previously been involved with, because maybe this was the first time, and maybe the first time is when he got caught. But it's also possible that he's done it before, and he's just not been caught. So he used it for this first time he used it for legal research, and was unaware that its content could be false. He was unaware that the content could be false. He has vowed to never use AI to supplement his legal research in future without absolute verification of its authenticity. He didn't supplement it in this case. He used the AI and then didn't check any of the stuff that it returned. Like, that's not just supplementing. That is replacing your research with an AI system. So, screenshots attached to the filing appear to show a conversation between Mr. Schwartz and ChatGPT. Is Varghese a real case? Reads one message referencing Varghese via China Southern Airlines Co. Limited, one of the cases that no other lawyer could find. ChatGPT responds that yes, it is, prompting S to ask, what is your source? After double-checking, ChatGPT responds that the case is real and can be found on legal reference databases such as LexisNexis and Westlaw. It says that the other cases, as prior to Mr. Schwartz, are also real. So ChatGPT is convinced that the cases that it provided are real. Both lawyers who work for the firm Levidow, Oberman have been ordered to explain why they should not be disciplined at an 8th of June hearing. Wait, they've been ordered to explain why they should not be disciplined. I really want to know what they try to say for that. I guess, Peter Leduca could probably argue that he had no knowledge of the research being done, and assume that his co-worker was doing valid research. Basically just throwing his co-worker under the bus and trying to get him to, like, just take all the blame for it. But they could probably turn around and say, well, you as the lawyer probably should have double-checked this research to make sure that what's being said from this attorney at your law firm is also valid. I don't know how either of them, especially well, Schwartz is not getting away from any any punishment. Definitely not. But I'm very curious to see how this goes. So a lot of people are using cases like this, cases where art's a little bit, a little bit funky, and you have some wonky fingers, some wonky hair, some wonky clothes, things like that, as reasons why these neural network language learning models, obviously the image ones aren't language learning models, but they're more like just general neural network stuff with image based models. But a lot of people are using these as examples for why like AI isn't going to be a serious problem going into the future. Like, oh, look, right now it doesn't do this thing perfectly, therefore you shouldn't be worried whatsoever. Like, this is the same sort of logic, right? As saying, hey, we shouldn't be worried about getting run over. We shouldn't be worried about car accidents, right? Because we're driving Model Ts, and Model Ts can't go that quickly. And if you crash a Model T, what? You're going to crash it? How quickly does the Model T go? Let's find out. Model T top speed. Oh, fuck. They actually go pretty quickly. 40 to 45 miles per hour. 65 to 70 Ks. Okay. Maybe that was a bad example. Because they actually go relatively quickly. But, like, okay, we shouldn't be that worried about car crashes because, look, how often do car crashes happen? There's, like, 100 cars on the road. Like, we don't need to worry about protection. Like, that doesn't matter. And then, flash forward, like, 50, 100 years later, where you're driving, Teslas, and they're going 0 to 60 in these insane speeds, and crashing cars would just instantly kill people. Like, obviously, no one would say that we shouldn't have worried about making cars safer. The same logic can be said about this AI. Right now, it has a lot of issues, and yeah, it can't do a lot of tasks. But as we go forward, things are going to get better. Things are going to get more powerful. GPUs are going to get better at handling these data models. We're going to have bigger data models. And as things go on, things are going to get better and better and better. Like, if you've not been paying attention to the AI art space, it's gotten really, really good. Like, when we're talking about these models that are customized for a specific art style, like, there are some times when I see some AI art. I'm like, wait. I look at it. I'm trying to, like, it's tagged as AI, so clearly it's AI art. But I'm like, I don't see the same sort of markers as I used to see. Like, the markers are getting so much smaller now. Like, you used to be able to look at the hair and be like, okay, the hair looks a little off. Oh, you can look at the fingers. Obviously, fingers are off. Maybe the clothes, the fabric doesn't move the way that fabric normally would move. But you need to look at it real fucking closely in some of these models and some of these prompts they're using to actually work out what the hell is, like, whether this is actually AI generation or not. And this is, like, maybe 6 months or a year after AI art became part of, like, the public discourse. I don't know where it's going to be in, like, 5 or 10 years. I would imagine we're at the point where it's basically indiscernible. Like, even if you are fully, like, in on, like, how this AI stuff works and how the images are being generated, there is going to come a point where even if you think that you know everything about this, there's going to be pieces that slip by you and seem entirely real. And that's without even considering that you can do this generation and then touch it up as a human. Like, if you're an artist and you're using it and then touch it up, like, you can get rid of all of those issues that are there, and there's just no indication that it's AI generated whatsoever. The main reason I'm talking about AI is a lot of the tech news sites all of a sudden started talking about the danger of AI. So a couple of days ago, there was all of these articles like, Tech World warns risk of extinction from AI. Should be a global priority like pandemics and nuclear war. All of a sudden, there are these these like articles that just came out of fucking nowhere, where everybody is just trying to get you terrified of AI. And I think people who are underplaying the dangers, like, it's not a good idea to overplay the dangers. Like, we're not going to be dead by next year. Like, that's not going to happen. But anyone who's saying that, like, the idea of having a job, especially any knowledge-based job, isn't going to be under extreme threat over the next coming years, anyone who's ignoring that is out of their mind. Yeah. Anyone who's ignoring that is genuinely out of their mind. But hey, I just sit back and I watch things burn, basically. I can't change any of the stuff that's going on. Like, I'm just a dude ranting in his room with his lights turned off and some gamer lights behind him. I am not changing the world. I am just here analyzing things as they go and maybe having a little bit of fun with it. Ooh, God. Speaking of having a little bit of fun with it, I guess while on the topic of AI, we can talk about AI SpongeBob. So, is it live right now? It is live right now. Okay. So, this is a YouTube channel. It's been going for about a month, where they have been generating, like, SpongeBob bits from topics they've been getting on Discord. It's been doing, like, AI voice synthesis, AI conversation generation, things like that, and just making it a SpongeBob episode. Let's see what's happening right now. Okay, SpongeBob having a stroke. Okay, maybe this is a bad time to join. Yep, okay.
You are. And it's going to be a boy?
That happens sometimes.
A few moments later.
Hey, Patrick, what are you up to? What other...
He's gonna have another stroke. Okay. This normally doesn't happen. I think SpongeBob's broken. He usually has one stroke and then he's good.
Sitting here watching some TV.
What are you watching?
Some of those weird adult shows.
This is basically Weed Eater. That is what this is. This is just Weed Eater.
You know, those shows with the people in them having sex and doing drugs and stuff.
Ooh, that's so gross! Why would you watch those?
I don't know. I just find them interesting, I guess.
Well, I think they're disgusting and I don't want to watch them with you.
That's fine. I can watch them by myself.
A few
there we go.
moments
Okay, the
later.
bit's done.
Hey, Patrick!
So basically, it just keeps going through. It keeps going through topic after topic, and it's just like has these individual SpongeBob bits. And obviously, some of them work. Some of them, the AI completely dies and just doesn't know how words work. But like, we're gonna see more of this coming out. Like, I think Neurosummer is what really started this trend off. If you're not seeing Neurosummer, I talked about her a while back. This is a project by Vedal, a little turtle developer dude. And it's just a VTuber that's powered by an AI model that just has conversations with the chat. Obviously, this is it's a neat gimmick for how content can work. It's very popular. I know there's some people that are worried that this is going to become the way that we do content. Like, this is every creator is going to be an AI creator. And absolutely there is a possibility that happens in the future. I think right now it's one of those gimmicks like open worlds, like, you know, what's another good example? Motion controls. Where when it first starts happening, it's like, this is super cool. everything is going to be doing it. But it's a matter to be seen of how it goes long term, whether it becomes a wider trend that others are going to be making use of, or if it's just this, like, you know, small scale thing that's really popular for a period and then just dies off. Maybe dies off for a while and then comes back at some point in the future. But right now, I think this is one of the most exciting times we've ever been in for technological innovation. Like, we are basically at the start of the next industrial revolution. This is the AI revolution, and I don't know how things are going to change over the next 5, 10, 50 years. Like, by the time I'm retired, I don't know, like, what the world is going to be remotely like. Like, you know, if you're living in the 1600s, 1650 probably isn't that different, right? Like, maybe there's been, like, a couple of kings. Maybe there's been, you know, some wars. Maybe, like, you know, some cities burnt down. But, like, the technology available didn't really change a ton. But, like, what we have between, you know, the year 2000 and what we have, and then, like, 2050, or we can go from right now, 2023 to 2073. Like, you can see what we already have now in, like, the past 5-10 years. Like, 16 years, right? 16 years since the iPhone. We went from having these old phones with the buttons to dial stuff. You have multiple letters on a single key, and great devices, and it would be nice to go back to them. But now we have smartphones like this. Like, this is really thin. Like, this is ridiculous. And this is just now. This is 16 years after the iPhone. What is 50 years? And what is the processing power available to these devices over that period of time? I don't know. I don't know. Like, I can make my predictions. I can be like, yeah, you know, things are going to get faster. They're going to be, you know, Moore's Law. Moore's Law is going to keep going. I know that, actually, a funny quote from Jensen from a video, like, years back, he said that Jensen Huang Moore's Law is dead. So, years back, was it years back? Or is it like last year? Wait. I know a bunch of people have said it, but last year saying that Moore's Law is dead. There was recently an NVIDIA, there was an NVIDIA talk where they're unveiling some new stuff, some new AI stuff, you know, GPU stuff. It's NVIDIA. Oh no, it's 2019 he first said it. But, like, during this talk, he was like, Moore's Law is still going strong. Moore's Law, you know, Moore's Law is great. Like, he just completely forgot he ever said Moore's Law is dead, because they keep working things out. Surely at some point it has to, like, we have to hit a limit on the amount of computing that is possible in a device. Like, you get to a point where, like, you run out of, like, atoms. Like, you have to, like, when you're down to, like, an atom size, like, you can't really go much smaller, at least with the existing style of computing we have. Maybe there's a way to work on a smaller scale, but, like, what we know as computing today, like, that's your limit. Maybe you can make things bigger, but, like, I don't know. Surely Moore's Law has to die at some point. Surely. I don't know when. It's supposed to be dead like 10 years ago, but it's like it's still going. Like, every couple of years, like, some big tech CEO will, like, Moore's Law's dead, and then, like, we just keep following Moore's Law. Like, surely it has to die at some point. Like, I don't know. I'm not an engineer. Maybe there's something that they know that I don't know. Maybe they have some alien tech that allows them to keep, like, making things smaller and smaller and smaller, and just ignore, like, physical laws. I don't know. It's entirely possible. I wouldn't say it's, like, a likely answer, but, like, maybe. Maybe. I think I've pretty much gone over everything I wanted to talk about. I guess we got like 15 minutes of the show left, at least going by my my normal timing. I guess I could talk about this keyboard. I bought a new keyboard a while back. Not a while back, maybe like 2 weeks ago. Logitech G915 TKL. So my old keyboard was the Redragon K618. This is what that keyboard is a clone of. And honestly, I would argue that if you're looking for a keyboard, you probably just go buy the knockoff. So this thing at full price is $400. I did not pay that because that's stupid. Don't pay that. I got it 50% off, so it's $200. Even then, and this is Australian, right? Like not real money. So it's like 150 real money, which is a lot for a keyboard. I would say just go buy the Red Dragon. Like, to be completely honest, this is the Red Dragon is like 90% of what this keyboard does, and in some cases actually does things better. This keyboard has some weird key wobble because it uses a different style of a switch. So like, I'm gonna take this key off. There we go. So, you won't be able to see it. But so this actually, why did I just bring up a picture? Yeah, I could very much do that. We have technology here, Brody. Use the technology. A Logitech G915. Logitech's website. Surely they've got a picture of the key on it. Where is the keys? The keys? Where are the keys? Keys. No, I don't want to see the key caps. Should be the actual keys. If I look up switch, there'll be a picture here somewhere. Surely. This is a bad picture. Wait, this is a better picture. Okay. So, they have these switches here. So, basically you have two little pegs that are spaced apart, and they're shaped like legs, right? They go into the leg position. So there's no stability on the top or the bottom, so you can't wobble them. Oh, you wobble them a little bit left and right, but there's a bit of wobble up and down as well. If you compare this to the Red Dragon switches, Red Dragon K618 switch. Here? Is that... Yes, here we go. Okay. Open tab. Here we go. So these are also a low profile switch, but they've got like a cross more similar to the traditional cherry switches, and they have plastic around the outside and around the top. So they have a lot less wobble of the switches. And I don't think the wobble's bad, right? Like, it's something that feels a little off when you first use it. And if I just bought this keyboard and hadn't bought the Red Dragon, I would be fine with this. But if you were going to buy one, the extra feature you get with this thing, like, you can disable the keys that would get in the way of gaming. So, like, your Windows key, things like that. You have the Logitech software, obviously, and the Logitech software actually works well with Piper on Linux, so you can customize your lighting, like, on this keyboard. There's like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and a bunch of other support. You've got your nice, smooth scrolling volume wheel. The other keyboard does have a volume wheel as well. Like, as I said, it's a clone of the keyboard. So, most of the features are the same. But if I was going to buy one, I would absolutely buy the Red Dragon. Like, the extra money for this... I guess the one thing that is better about this is it does... Like, it feels more premium, right? Like, you have a metal baseboard. It feels like a more expensive keyboard. But it's not like the K618 really flexed that badly where it was that important. So go buy that, basically. If you want a low profile keyboard, that would be my suggestion. Maybe you have a better suggestion. I am still a fan of scissor switches. The problem is buying scissor switches is very, very, very difficult to do because not many companies actually make scissor switch boards. And the ones that do, most of them aren't that great. Like the Cherry keyboards are probably the only ones that are genuinely really good. But hey, it is what it is. Anyway, I think that's pretty much everything worth talking about. My shoulder's been killing me like half the show. That's why I've been like stretching a bit. But that's pretty much it. So I think next week's episode is probably gonna be the one with Matthew Miller, the Fedora guy. Unless something changes, that should be what we record next time. And then unless something changes again, the episode after that is probably going to be Alan Pope. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We haven't actually arranged a time for that one. But Matthew is definitely getting recorded next week. So that's happening then. Anyway, I guess enjoy the rest of your day, all that fun stuff. If you are not subscribed to the main channel, go do so. I do Linux videos there 6-ish days a week, sometimes things that aren't Linux videos, sometimes general tech videos like I talked about the Newitt Trojan, the near ultrasound inaudible Trojan, where it like runs voice commands on your phone with like an audio frequency that you can't hear if you're above the age of 30. Like it's above your hearing range. So that's fun. Go check that out. I've got some other Linux videos coming out, things like that. Yeah, if you're not subscribed to the gaming channel, go do that as well. We are probably, we'll definitely be done with Devil May Cry 3. So I am just grinding out Yakuza until Final Fantasy 16 comes out. When that comes out, we're going to be playing that fucking hardcore. At least not really. Maybe we'll do one hardcore day, but it's going to be... I'm going to be playing Final Fantasy 16 as soon as I get my hands on it. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, the video version is available on the YouTube at Tech Over Tea. And if you're watching the video version, you can find the audio version on any podcast platform. Write out Tech Over Tea, there's an RSS feed, stick it in your favorite app, and you'll basically be good to go. So that is going to be it for me. If you've noticed that, like... my voice sounds a little bit off today. It's because I'm sort of recovering from a cold. Because apparently I'm just going to get sick every second week during this winter. Because whatever. I'm surprised my voice held out for the entire show. So I'm going to go chill out before I go to work for a bit. And then, yeah. That's going to be it for me. Enjoy the rest of your day. All that fun stuff. And I'm out.